Hey everyone. So I just want to see if my microphone is working. Uh, okay. Can you guys hear me now? Okay. Sure. So it's been a crazy. It's been a crazy day all over. Um, but yeah, it was very hard to wake up this morning, looking at my phone and just seeing the news that Brian Wilson passed away. Still hasn't hit me yet. But it's something that I think we all knew was coming. We didn't want it to happen. We didn't want it to come. We really hoped that Brian could have gotten better, but we knew that like after the passing of his beloved Melinda, that he wasn't gonna be around us that long. I know that he really misses his wife. He really misses Carl and Dennis. So I think it was for him. He felt like like it was his time to go. It was his time. I have to admit off the bat, I really wasn't much of a Beach Boys fan. I think it that comes with like the stigma that happens when you live in a kind of like an inland town. A town that's very very more Hispanic than ever. And the Beach Boys was one of those kind of bands that really couldn't resonate with Mexicans in my area. Basically kind of represented the white kind of conversation of Californians and stuff like that, like the white community. And I was like one of those people that kind of grew up with that kind of mindset. But I think by the time I got into high school, I realized that there's actually more to Brian Wilson, and there's actually a very big inclusivity when it came to the music of the Beach Boys. Um, and especially like a lot looking at their influences, like they're influenced by Stevie Wonder, Chuck Berry, songs like "In a Still the Night." They're totally into the doo-wop stuff. And so it really showed like this band was all about being inclusive. um, and so I started to really pay attention to the Beach Boys when I was in high school. I just remember just going up. I think we are going to Huntington Beach or something to visit an uncle, and my dad used to make like these really cool mixtapes, and these compilation stuff, and put it on, and all of a sudden this amazing song came on, which was "Don't Worry, Baby," and this is the song that I felt started it off for me, and this is like my favorite song, "Don't Worry, Baby." And after really really listening to it, I realized like this is really beautiful music. Th- this guy's really on the level. And then the next song on that cassette tape was the Today version of "Help Me, Rhonda." And even then, I was like struck again, like like the beautiful production on that song and the harmonies and everything. And I was like, I really need to dig into this band. I need to really dig into how to their songs. So the first thing I remember doing once I got back home is buying this CD, the Beach Boys, "Good Vibrations, Greatest Hits," and just like taking it home, then listening it to my on my CD player, and just being like, "Wow, these are really amazing songs." I was like, I love Surfer Girl, I love Lil Deuce Scoop and Dance Dance Dance, and you know California Girl, and then really really drove it home when you got to stuff like "Wouldn't It Be Nice" and "God Only Knows" and "Stoop John B." Of course, Kokomo's on there. I actually do like Kokomo. It's a really good song. Um, but yeah, and so right when I bought this, I was like, okay, if this is what they're offering, I wonder what more stuff did he do. So it was like, around that time I was working at a friend's instrument shop, and he would pay me, like, almost every day for doing a job on the job well done, and every dollar, every, like, payment that I got, I used to go across the street, because I was working at Aloha Music in India, and right across the street from 111 was Kmart. This is when Kmart was actually really had it going on, and they used to have the twofers. So every single day, after I got paid, I would just go across the street, and I just will buy a twofer, and just starting to add these to my collection. And I would just, like, listen to these religiously, and just, like, just go into my room, put the headphones on, just press play on them, and just start really going to town on this catalog. And the day also came where it was time to finally get this masterpiece of an album, Pet Sounds. And again, it was a thing where, after listening to this music, I was like, I really want to start taking myself into that direction as a songwriter and a producer. And um and so I did. I just, like, like, I trying to there even though there was the internet, it wasn't like, the chords were readily available to you online. And most time, if they were, it was like most of the chords were wrong. Luckily, I had a friend who's a piano player, and he loved the Beach Boys, and so he would lend me a songbook, and I would just, like, take it home, um, and just, like, learn all the bass parts and stuff, and the chords on the guitar, and even inspired me to even go to college and to learn music theory and to learn piano, because I really wanted to, like, play all these parts. Like, I loved what was going on some songs like, Wouldn't It Be Nice, or Heroes and Villains, and a lot of the other stuff. I just really want to hone in on what he was playing on those songs. And so I was instantly, like, by the time that I graduated high school, I was like a true fan of the Beach Boys. And the cool thing was, when I graduated, that's when they did the All Star tribute to Brian Wilson at the Radio City Music Hall in New York. And that, I believe, that was, like, the first time ever that he came out on stage and performed Heroes and Villains. And it was, like, the first time ever that anybody also came out and did Surfs Up. I believe it was Jimmy Webb, David Crosby, and Vince Gill that came out to do Surfs Up. And then I remember the Boys Choir of Harlem did Our Prayer. Um, so it was. Um, then I start to learn about, like, what is this thing that everybody's mentioning? What is this smile? And then luckily I went out to some type of convention, and I found a bootleg of Smile, and I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, a lot of these songs are on Smiley Smile. Why is it on this? And so when I listened to it, I was like, okay, these are the way better versions. I like this version of Vegetables, or this version of Wonderful, and Wind Chimes and stuff. And I was like, well, I never heard these parts of Heroes and Villains before. And then also hearing, like, the parts of Surf's Up, the Mrs. O'Leary's Cow, the Fire tapes, and Water, Water, Cool Water, Left to See Dada. And I was like, this is why wasn't this released? And it's one of those things where, like, you sort of hear, like, the story behind it. But then it was cool that 2 years later, we finally got Brian Wilson presents Smile. And um and I so I'm lucky that I still have the shrink wrap on it, even though it is kind of falling apart and is kind of brittle. But I did listen to this a lot, and I was like, wow, these are great stuff. And and then what I loved about this was it was because of this that we end up he came back to life as an artist, and then we got this amazing album, That Lucky Old Sun, and as you can see, I played it a lot. I really listened to this album so much. It's such a great album. If you haven't listened to this, please do. It's a great album. I know Scott Bennett, who is one of the people that works plays with him. Co-wrote a lot of the songs. You have Van Dyke Parks that's back working on this, and then and so yeah, I just love this. This is like an album that I listened to a lot in college. Um, and as well as like he I was also around that time that afterwards he reunited with the surviving members of the Beach Boys. He did that. That's the way God. That's 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 why God made the radio. It's such a great album too, especially the title song. So great to hear him do that. And then all of a sudden we got this amazing album, which was No Peer Pressure. Um, so um, and I was happy to finally be able to see him perform live. He came out here to Indio during March 2017. And I remember that because it was kind of like shortly after my grandmother passed away. And a friend of mine who worked at the venue, he heard that, like what happened with my grandma, that I was very close to her. And he knew that this show was happening. So he was like, hey, I see. I've always remembered that you're like a fan of the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson. Do you wanna do you want tickets to see Brian Wilson perform here? And I was like, yes, definitely. So he gave me a couple of tickets. I got found a friend of mine to take me, and I got to be there in front row to see Brian perform. He was looking at me while I was singing, and right also across looking at me as well was the late great Billy Hanish, from Dino Desi and Billy was like right there. And before the concert, I got to met with Robin Gregory, which was like the multi instrumentalist. Brian, we known each other online for like the longest time. He helped me out with like figuring out a lot of stuff of Brian's music, and he also helped me out with a couple of zombies stuff that I wanted to figure out on piano and stuff. So I got to talk with him a lot, and like I also was friends with Billy on Facebook as well. We talked as well, and so it was you know great to to see them live, and they're like getting kicked out of me just because I think I was like in my mid 30s, and they're like saying this young kid knows all of the Beach Boys songs. Like I was singing along to all the songs, and really getting into it. Like I was like, oh my god, and it must have made Brian happy. I saw him like smile a bit and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, your music, young people love the Beach Boys too. So yeah, so but now he's he's gone from he's gone now, and I know that he's in a better place. I know he's back with Melinda. I know that he's back with Carl and Dennis. They're now the three-part harmony of angels out there singing those beautiful harmonies again. He was like the missing part. The missing seventh or ninth, or needed. Um, so Um, so thank you so much, Brian, for everything that you brought to our lives. Our life is better knowing that your music was there for us. You gave us about close to 60 years of amazing memories and music and harmonies, and you really did break ground with everything that you've done for us. Uh, I know for me as a musician, you made me really wanted to hone in onto my skills as a pianist, as a bassist, as a composer and arranger and producer. I totally learned a lot about production from him. Um, knowing the whole idea that your music could go into different dimensions if you really push yourself, to do that. So this is like my tribute to you, Brian. Thank you so much for everything and everything you brought to everybody. The world is gonna be a lot less brighter now that you're gone. But I know you're gonna be looking down on us, like we'll be hearing your songs. Your voice will live on forever. You know, as long as anybody is continuing doing three part, like beats, four part harmony and everything that's has to do with the kind of music that you did. I know that there's young artists that are looking at that still listen to your music and applying it to their music. I highly recommend Charm by Claro. She said that she took in elements from Smiley Smile and Wild Honey onto that album and stuff. So definitely listen to her music. Her music is amazing. She's she's really studied her music, and I know she's been posting all day on Instagram with Beach Boys songs that she loves. She's been posting stuff from Smiley Smile, Friends, and um, Today and Sunflower. So the young people know your music, Brian. The young people, artists know your music and appreciate your music, and you inspired so many people. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for everybody that has tuned in. I don't. Let me know, like what are your memories of Brian? I would like to know, and have a great one, and see you around the streams. Love and mercy.